I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
Talk about a lot of fun things today on the Q&A. How to do a cyber attack. I give the specific details. I give a brand new $10 million business idea. I also talk about what exactly is the economic reality now, and is it disconnected from the stock market? Also talk about how to create a fashion line, and my favorite little idea, creating the CHAZ, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle region, the CHAZ travel agency, plus answer many more questions. I also want to add, I want people to start texting me questions throughout the day so I can either answer them on the spot or answer them in the IG Lives. You can text me anytime. When you text me, it'll send back a sign-up text. Text me at 203-590-8607. So that's 203-590-8607. Text me anytime. Ask me questions. I'll also text back once a week or more, my idea list, any meetups I'm in, and so on. Anyway, enjoy the Q&A. Here it is. Do you have anything you want to talk about? No. Hello, we're live. Welcome, everybody. Max, first one to join. Welcome, and we'll be answering some questions. But first, it's been a couple of days. This is Tuesday. It's been since Friday, and it's like, I really do feel right now like we're living in a simulation. Don't you feel that way? Yes. It's like every day it does. The kind of world sort of reminds me of when I read about, honestly, Germany in the 1930s, because it gets worse, and everyone said, okay, this is bad, but at least it's not going to get any worse. Like, okay, they made us all wear stars, but at least it's not going to get worse than this. They made us all give up our businesses, but at least it's not going to get worse than this. Okay, they forced us out of our homes and into the ghetto, but at least it's not going to get any worse than this. Okay, they're telling us to go out of Germany and into these summer camps, but at least it's not going to get any worse than this. So I sort of feel like I'm not comparing, I am comparing the world now to World War II, because it does almost feel like that. Like, oh, there's this crazy pandemic, everybody better stay indoors. oh, crazy pandemic. Nobody's even allowed to open their businesses or go outside. Oh my gosh, this crazy pandemic. Everyone needs to wear a mask and gloves and stay inside unless they're an essential worker. Or if you're a 15-year-old boy or girl and we need delivery of groceries. Like, there was hypocrisy began pretty early on. Like, no schools allowed, but if you're a teenage boy or girl, then sure, you can deliver food to all the susceptible populations in your city. And so that's when the hypocrisy began. Like, someone, and look, you can make predictions all you want about this pandemic. Sometimes you'll be right, sometimes you'll be wrong, sometimes I've been right, sometimes I've been wrong. But someone just mentioned me on Twitter and said, oh, Jay Altucher must be feeling pretty guilty right now about opening up his club and having a comedy show outdoors when cases have been ticking up. Well, a couple of things I want to mention. When we did the comedy show outdoors, everybody in the audience was wearing a mask and everybody was socially distanced, 6 feet apart, and so on. Second off, at the exact same time, 50,000 people were gathering in Washington Square Park downtown, and they were not social distancing. So that's...
And they didn't have a mask. 100% of them did not have masks.
Yeah, some of them had masks, some of them didn't.
Right.
And by the way, I'm not saying they were wrong. I'm saying it's wrong to accuse us of, like, why would I feel guilty about having a comedy show? Nor would I feel guilty about going to a protest. We went to a protest.
Yeah.
And here's the reality. In some places in the United States, cases and hospitalizations were ticking up. But in New York City right now, and I'll take a look at it. In New York City right now, in New York State, all of New York State, there were two new hospitalizations in the entire state. So while I do think it's hypocrisy that Andrew Cuomo yesterday said, we've got to take away the liquor licenses of every business that's open. And that's so hypocritical when yesterday there was huge protests with thousands of people in Brooklyn. Why didn't he shut that down? So I'm not saying he should shut the protest down. I'm saying he shouldn't shut the businesses down. There was only 2 hospitalizations in the entire state. I don't even know what fraction that is. Right. So you got to give people a chance to make a living and support their families, or else the anger is going to keep boiling up. Don't think the protests are not related to the economy and the lockdown and the tensions and the stress and the uncertainty. Of course, the protests are about George Floyd being killed and a history of police brutality and racism and all sorts of other injustices. And the rioting and looting is related to this simmering tension of being locked in your house with 40 million people losing their jobs during these lockdowns. So just stop being hypocritical. That's all we ask.
And just stay consistent.
Yeah, let there be protests and let's listen to the protesters. But at the same time, if someone opens up their restaurant and they social distancing, even has masks, people will make their own choices. I'll make my own choice if I want to go into a restaurant without a mask. Now you can argue that endangers all other people, but let's say if the virus is rampant. But there's only 2 hospitalizations yesterday in New York City. Now, someone also said, James, are you going to admit you're wrong? There's increasing hospitalizations, and I've seen all these tweets. Alabama, Arizona, Texas, Florida, that's all have been mentioned. And the fact is, I had to look because I didn't know. And in all of those states, some of those states have about equal hospitalizations as they were a week ago. Almost all of them are down from the peak, and all of them are down from where they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm not quite sure yet where I'm wrong. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, the U.S. in general has declining daily new hospitalizations now. And if anything, I'd be worried about New York City with 50,000 people protesting, which is fine, not arguing against the protesting, and CHAZ, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle. If anybody's in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle, I'd be curious what you think, you're even welcome to come on my podcast and talk about it. Send me a message or tweet to me on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I'll check all my boxes on Instagram. But I've seen two conflicting stories about the so-called CHAZ. First off, I've read one article, I think this might be the BS headline of the day. I've heard this on CNN. It's like somebody said it's like a festival there. It's like an arts festival. So everybody is like playing music and hanging out and peacefully trying to figure out solutions in the Seattle Autonomous Zone, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. But there are guns. And so everybody's not everybody, some people are carrying guns. I've also seen, so the flip side is I've seen videos. It's not like these are hidden. I've seen videos on Twitter of people fighting. I've seen arson, examples of arson, people burning stores. There was one case where a crowd tried to stop an arsonist, and then another crowd tried to protect the arsonist by threatening the crowd that was trying to stop the arsonist. So the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, to me, I mean, and maybe I'm a little older. I feel like as I get older, I want things to be worked out within the status quo, maybe because I care about my family and friends, and I care about my own safety, maybe. I'm not as willing to take risks. I don't know. But it does seem to me that the CHAZ, if I were thinking rationally, I would say to myself, somebody here is trying to create a Waco style situation. So Waco was this early 90s cult, town in Texas. There was a cult there. David Koresh was running the cult. It's the Branch Davidian cult. And there ended up being a shootout between the FBI and police and the Branch Davidian cult. And there was a fire that was set and everybody died, including all the children that were there. Yeah, it was in Texas. Were you living in Texas?
Yeah, I was in Dallas.
So was that like horrible news? Like,
of course, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, but I guess if you heard something about that now, it wouldn't be so crazy.
Yeah, now it's like, okay, that's a Tuesday.
Like, okay, that's a Tuesday.
But I sort of feel like somebody wants that to happen in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. I sort of feel like there's innocent people there who are peacefully protesting and trying to work out solutions. And look, if you saw Dave Chappelle's special the other day, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he very carefully kind of spoke about the anger and the history behind that anger. And I could see why people who are in this Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone don't necessarily trust the government, and they think they are trying an experiment. Oh, we can live without the U.S. government. The U.S. government is not going to let them live that way. And the people who are whoever is behind the scenes here, they know that there's going to be a conflict ultimately with the U.S. government. I'm not saying there should be a conflict. I'm saying there are people who are planning on there being a conflict, and they hope that there are deaths involved, and that will spur further revolt and revolution and rioting and looting. And who knows if it's an individual, if it's a group. I think no one has really been able to answer these questions. Like when I have talked to both Democrat officials and Republican officials, everybody says something different. Republicans say Antifa, Democrats say white supremacists. I just don't think we have any idea. And other people say it's just crazy individuals, but there are definitely people who are not peaceful protesters who are in Seattle or inside this autonomous zone who want and hope for conflict in order to create more protests, more anarchy, and so on. And so we're just going to see what happens. I think, anybody who says this is just a fun festival should probably be voted out of office, like the Seattle mayor and governor. I just noted that the lieutenant governor of Washington started following me on Twitter. I kind of want to bring him on the podcast just to see what his thoughts are on this, because maybe he has a more unbiased opinion, because lieutenant governors are like vice presidents. They don't have anything to do. And meanwhile, and yesterday, I don't know if you noticed, but I know for me, the internet wasn't working so well in the morning. Then later on in the day, everyone was telling us, oh my gosh, the internet's not working. And then by the end of the day, a Twitter account with 6.5 million followers named Anonymous tweeted that there was this huge cyber attack against the U.S., the largest cyber attack in the U.S. history. And it's been debunked. T-Mobile said, no, we just had some crossed wires. But who knows? Maybe there was a cyber attack. Maybe it wasn't. Everybody's now blaming it on T-Mobile, but we don't use T-Mobile, and we were hearing it.
I do.
You use T-Mobile, but we in the house.
Oh, yeah, no.
And then if you look at the complaints, there are various websites that keep track of all the complaints. Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, all spiked in complaints yesterday evening. So who knows? I don't know. And here's how. By the way, just in case you want to do a denial of service attack, just in case you want to do a cyber attack, I'll explain really briefly how you can do a cyber attack. Basically, the basics is that you hit a company's main computers, their servers, with so many requests, like trillions of requests, all at the same second, so many requests that the server goes down because they can't handle it all. Now you think, well, okay, if I'm AT&T and or if I'm McDonald's and somebody's trying to bring down all the McDonald's servers, well, I'll just see where all those attacks are coming from, and then I'll block that location. But here's the clever thing: is that these denial of service attacks, they do something called spoofing. They pretend to be coming from all over the world, and then there's no one location you can block. You can't figure out where they're coming from. Now, do they pretend, or are they really coming from all around the world? Good question that you didn't ask. So there's something called bot armies. So you ever click on an email and the email says, hey, James, this is the message I meant to send you the other day about your bank account. You got to be careful. Click here to find out what's going on. And you click and nothing happens. And then you figured, maybe I accidentally just clicked on a virus, but nothing seemed to happen. Trust me when I say something did just happen. On almost every computer, including probably this one, except this one's just out of the box a week ago, but like on almost every Fortune 500 company and many home computers are infected by what are called these invisible or silent bots. And what happens when you click on one of those links is that a bot downloads itself into the operating system of your computer. It hides itself so that, virus software can't find it, and it just sleeps. And then at some point, a signal gets sent out to all the bots, and it says, okay, start making millions of requests to McDonald's.com or AT&T.com or JamesAltucher.com or whatever. And that's how these bot armies are like sleeper cells, and they're on millions and millions of computers. I can guarantee you there's probably a 90% chance your home computers or your laptops or whatever are infected. I remember one time I was looking at investing in a company that detects bot armies. And I said, how are you actually, is there software you can make that can outwit, that can be more clever than the people making the bot armies? And this company was made up of all PhDs, about 20 PhDs worked there, all PhDs in math and computer science. And they said specifically, no matter how smart we are, they're smarter. Whoever's creating the bot armies is smarter than us. No matter what we do, they will come up with methods more clever. So the only thing you can do is really just don't ever click on a link that's in an email. Like the other day, I got an email from Google, and everything about that email looked correct. It said, James, it looks like somebody logged into your account from Kansas City, Missouri. And I didn't click on anything, but I checked, and everywhere I checked the source code of the email. It looked completely legit to me. But when I I went onto a different computer, I logged into my Google account, I checked for all access. There was no login from Kansas City, Missouri. So something was wrong with that email. I have no idea what it was. but I'm sure if I clicked on something, then I would have downloaded a bot or a virus. Chances are not a virus. Viruses are more rare than you think, but bots are extremely common, and that's how you do a denial of service attack. But you might ask, I don't have access to a bot army. How would I find a bot army? Well, there's something called the dark web, where you can there are bot armies for hire. So if I wanted to, for instance, attack a company, let's say I'm a gas station and I have a competitor down the street, or I'm an e-commerce store and I have a competitor on the web. I can go onto the dark web, and I won't really say anymore how to get there, because then it's not that I'm trying to hide anything, but there's no point. There's many ways to access the dark web. You could maybe Google it, but I would go onto the dark web and I would hire a bot army using Bitcoin, and I would use fake names every step of the way, and I would maybe log in from. I would leave my cell phone at home because they could track. The government could use towers, GPS to see where your phone hooked up, and they could find out where you were located. So I would leave my phone at home. I would get a laptop that I've never used. I would go to a Starbucks or a FedEx where I could log in, or a public access place. I would log into the dark web. I would hire a bot army. I would aim it, and I'd pay with Bitcoin, which is untraceable, or I would use even Zcash, which is even more private and untraceable. And then I would hire a bot army to invade my competitor's online store. So that, in a nutshell, is how to do a denial of service attack. Now, usually AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, they have the most sophisticated software of all to combat these denial of service attacks. But if it's huge, if it's trillions and trillions of service requests, and there's hundreds of bot armies, and it's coming from all over the world, it's a little bit, if it's really coordinated like that apparently North Korea has the skills, China has the skills, Iran, the USSR, not the USSR, Russia, they all have the skills to do it. They could do it. And then people say, well, how does North Korea know so much? They're where do they get the skills? Well, North Korea will send, through South Korea or China, they will send their smartest teenagers to schools like NYU or MIT or whatever, and they'll threaten to kill the families if the teenagers don't return. And then those people start getting the skills to do these attacks. So that, in a nutshell, is all about...
And it happens every day, actually. Like the DDoS, they said that goes on all the time.
Yeah, forever. Like, I remember in 1994 or 1995, I was keeping track of the web servers for AmericanExpress.com, HBO.com, and a couple places. I would say even in 1995, every single second, and now it's every single millionth of a second,
right,
but every single second, people were trying to log into these large websites. So you can guarantee now it's a million times a second.
Right.
And so
it's scary when you see it, or when you,
Yeah, and that's why the people who are in that business, like, look at, I did a podcast with John McAfee the other day. McAfee started McAfee Software, and that guy is a lunatic. Like, he's a billionaire for all I know. And I told him to his face, he's a mentally ill lunatic. Like, he was in Belize, he murdered someone and was on the run. Now he's in an undisclosed location for evading the U.S. for tax revenues. But we just zoomed and did a podcast. Check out the podcast. It was kind of funny.
Crazy.
But he's a very smart guy, because these guys have to think 6 levels ahead, and they have to be totally paranoid. And that's...
I can imagine living like that.
Yeah, and so I wonder, was he paranoid first, or did trying to combat viruses make him paranoid, or maybe a little bit of both? I don't know.
A little bit of both, probably.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor, one that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code JAMES for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code JAMES. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. Somebody just asked, Max just asked, and he was the first one to log in. Hey, Max just asked, can you, a pawn shop just moved into his town. Can I please discuss the pawn shop business model again? I would say there are 2 business models that are the best business models on the planet. There's no business models better than these 2 business models. One is insurance companies, and I'll describe that at some other point. That's why Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett was originally in what he thought was the best business model, which was the hedge fund business. And he's like, you know what? The hedge fund business is not the best business model. The biggest scam I can possibly do, because Warren Buffett will do the biggest scam possible, is the insurance company business. But the second best business model, and it's not a scam, actually, although a lot of people think it's a scam, the second best business model on the planet is pawn shops. So imagine this. So like Robin, let's say you didn't have a bank account. And by the way, 20 or 30 million people in the US don't have bank accounts. They can't afford one. You have to have a minimum, balance, or they can't afford all the services. Like a bank will charge you $20 a month to keep an account and a savings account. And you might not have, a lot of people just don't have an extra $20 a month.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, $240 a year is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a good number of people are what's called unbanked. And let's say someone who's unbanked wants to borrow money. You can go to your friends, but your friends don't have any money either. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to go to my rich friend who went to Harvard. No, if you're unbanked, your rich friend from Harvard is not returning your call. You don't have a rich friend from Harvard. So here's what you do. You take your whatever you can find, a bunch of books. Maybe you're going through the trash and you find a watch, or you find your grandfather's old, Joe DiMaggio signed baseball glove, whatever, or you take a gun. A lot of things in pawn shops are guns. Anyway, you take an item and you go to the pawn shop and you say, I want to borrow $500. I'll pay you back in 2 weeks when I get paid from my job. And they're like, okay, we'll lend you $500, maybe. What do you got? And so you say, well, I've got this gun. And so you show them a gun, and I don't know guns really. You show them a Rolex watch. Okay, so let's say I've got this old Rolex watch. It's 1979, the XYZ special Rolex watch. And here's what the pawn shop does at that exact moment. The pawn shop guy goes into his back office, he logs onto eBay, and he types in the exact specifications of your Rolex watch. By the way, he knows if you have a fake or not because he's an expert.
What if it's stolen?
Doesn't matter. He'll do it.
Huh.
I mean, a lot of, well, I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So let's say it's not stolen.
Okay.
But good question though. That's a good question. I should have. So pawn shop guys who work for a long time in a pawn shop, they're experts on diamonds, they're experts on jewelry, they're experts on guns, they're experts on Rolexes, and they're experts on cars, among other things. They're experts on anything collectible.
Yeah.
But he'll know if your Rolex, and I say it's a he for a reason. He'll know if it's a Rolex or not.
Mm-hmm.
Then he'll go into his back office, he'll type in all the specifications of your Rolex, and he'll see, oh, this Rolex goes for $2,000 on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
So I know if I can lend this gentleman $500 and I'll keep the Rolex, and if he doesn't pay back and by the way, I'm going to lend it out he has to pay me back 20% in a month. So I'll lend him $500, and if he doesn't pay me $600 in a month, so if he pays me $600 in a month, I will give him back the Rolex, and I made $100.
Yeah.
That's great. 20% on your money. If you could lend out all your money and make, 20% a month is hundreds of percent a year. So if you could basically, there's no investor in the world who can safely make hundreds of percent a year. So if everybody wants their possessions back, then the worst case scenario for the pawn shop is that they make hundreds of percent a year. They lend out all their money every month and they get back hundreds of percent a year. But let's say that guy doesn't come back with the $500, then you go onto eBay and the guy knows he could sell for $2,000. So he just lent out $500, and then a month later he's selling it on eBay for $2,000. Well, let's say that $2,000 price was BS on eBay. Well, he'll sell it for $700. So he makes back 40% in a month on his investment, which is an annualized, compounded, annualized 1,000%. It's as if it's like a bank has a savings account and gives out 0.5%, and a pawn shop it charges basically the equivalent of an annualized 1,000% a year. So it's normally when a bank lends money, let's say they lend you money to buy a house, they will only make 5 or 6% a year from you, and then let's say you don't pay them back. They've got to go through all these legal procedures to get the house. Pawn shop doesn't have to do any legal thing because they already have in their safe the Rolex, the diamond, the gun, whatever. They have it, and they have huge security. There's armed guards 24 hours a day. By the way, that's why most of the employees at pawn shops are men, because there is violence at pawn shops and there's risk. Everybody working at a pawn shop is carrying a gun. There's also plainclothes people, security guards carrying guns. So and everybody who goes to a pawn shop knows that. They know they cannot be violent in a pawn shop because they will be shot or they will be beaten up or whatever. So the pawn shop's an enormous business. You lend out money, but and it's collateral. There's collateral, but you keep the collateral and you charge enormous interest. Now to your question, what if it's stolen? Here's the crazy thing about pawn shops is that most of the people going to pawn shops are repeat customers. So they go every month and hey, here's my Rolex watch. Can I have that $500 again? Then they come back and they pay $600. Then 2 weeks later, they come back and say, oh, here's my Rolex. I got to borrow money again. All right, here's $500. So most of the people are repeat customers. So they know the pawn shops has a relationship with the community and the customers. So pawn shops, by the way, are rarely looted, even in riots, because that's the banking system of poor neighborhoods, is the pawn shop. Wow. There's no other bank, and that is the bank of a poor neighborhood. So it's an unbelievable. I remember in 2002, I needed to I needed to invest some money. And so what I did was I created basically a poor index. So there were several public companies that were pawn shops, payday lenders, rent-to-furniture stores, all of these companies that only work in basically the ghetto. And those stocks have all done well, and they will continue to do well. They're going to do well even more so now that, we're in a recession, there's all these people unemployed. Pawn shops are probably flourishing.
I wonder what the percentage of people that actually just let their item go.
Not as big as you would think. Huh. A lot of people will. So my business partner, his family is in the pawn shop business. This is how I know so much about it. Is I've been to the pawn shop many times, and I myself have bought things at the pawn shop, like a gun, whatever. But Dan was telling me that it's people come back for their stuff, and the pawn shop actually is very reluctant to just say in 30 days, okay, I'm selling it on eBay, because they want to be part of the community. They realize they're the bank for the community, but they'll continue to charge the interest. They'll charge 20% a month interest. So if you come back in 2 months, instead of owing $600, you now owe $720. Another month later, you owe whatever it is, $850.
I wonder if eBay, when they came along, if it hurt their business at all.
No, it made so good question. So did eBay hurt the pawn shop business? No, it made the business better, because the problem pawn shops have is, what if you give them something they can't sell? Yeah. Like, what if you show up with a bird cage? Mm-hmm. How are they going to just randomly sell a bird cage? Whereas a Rolex is almost like a commodity. It has a real price and there's demand for it. And so eBay gives them a way to just flip every item. And they know, and also eBay gives them an ability to price. Yeah. So because again, a lot of people, very few people go to the pawn shop thinking they're going to lose their item forever. They actually think it is a loan and they're going to get their item back. So they don't want to sell it on eBay.
So that's a different client.
But it is a good question though. Can you create an online pawn shop? So 2 business models around this. Can you create an online pawn shop? And the answer is, I don't know. That would be a really good business model. but pawn shops are regulated state by state. So if you were to create an online pawn shop, like, oh, send us your Rolex and we'll immediately Venmo you. We'll actually send a messenger to pick up your Rolex and we'll immediately Venmo you the $500. So an online pawn shop model would work extremely well. And in fact, because you don't have to pay for a physical location and security and employees, you just have to pay for the messenger. It's actually, I could underprice the community pawn shops. Yeah. So an online pawn shop model would work. Maybe you have to be based in the Cayman Islands or Ireland or something like that.
Or be based out of a brick and mortar pawn shop.
Well, but you're regulated state by state, and you're even regulated city by city in some cases. And some states actually try to limit the interest that you can charge. The problem with that is that then people in these neighborhoods can't get any banking. So it's really bad when there's regulation involved. But people think it's exploitive of poor people.
Sure.
But every business is a little bit exploitive. And so, but at the same time, it's exploitive. But at the same time, if the interest is too high, competitor pawn shops will open up and undercut. And this is the only banking for poor people. So an online pawn shop would be a great business model. I just don't know the legality. But here's another great business model, which I know would work. And we've tested this idea out. We know there's demand. And I've just never done it. So so this is another, I'm going to give the 10 million business idea of the week without it being Friday, but this idea will work. It's just a little bit more expensive to start. So what you do is every pawn shop needs more money. So I just said how they get up to thousands of % interest a year. Like if you could charge 20% a month and you keep the collateral, that's a bulletproof, literally a bulletproof business model. But here's the thing, banks will not lend to pawn shops because pawn shops feel a little shady and it feels exploitive to poor neighborhoods. Banks will refuse, 100% of the banks refuse to lend money to pawn shops. So a great business model, and it's a wide open business model, is to go to all the legit I would go to pawn shops that have existed for 20 years or more. So they're established in the community. You know, they're well known by the Small Business Administration and so on. And I would offer credit lines to pawn shops, and I could charge 10% a month. I know pawn shops run out of money all the time. Enough people borrow money. Where's the pawn shop going to get extra cash?
Well, do you think people use them to wash their money? Do you think that's why it's a little rough? Maybe they're getting their money loans from loan sharks. I don't know what you call them.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so because it's but it could be, but I don't know. But in my experience, pawn shops are so heavily regulated as opposed to other cash businesses like laundromats and famously from Breaking Bad, car washes or, video game arcades or whatever, that pawn shops are so heavily regulated, they're probably not run by criminals. But it's a great business model to go to pawn shops and lend, when they run out of cash, to be available, that they could draw down, and whatever amount of cash they draw down, you charge 10% a month or even 5% a month. If you were getting 5% a month, then compounded, that's about 100% a year. It's about 120% a year. You'll make an enormous amount of money, and you could do this all over the country. There's no limitation on the need for money by pawn shops. So you could literally, whatever money is invested in you. So you could, let's say other hedge funds will invest in you, and they can invest up to probably several $100 million with you, and you could put all that money to work every single month going to pawn shops around the country, and you'll instantly be worth tens of millions of dollars. So that is the $10 million business idea of the week. But unlike other business models that I've shared, this one costs a little bit of money to start. Not a lot though. I can go to a pawn shop down the street and say, hey, if you need an extra $10,000, you could draw it down for me. And then start from that. And then you get investors when you have a track record and so on. So you could start with somewhat little, but it'll take a little bit more time to ramp up. And again, I have not seen anyone do this. And every time I know why this is true. First off, I know from the pawn shops that I personally know, when I've mentioned this idea to them, they said, we will borrow from you today if you start this. Second, one time I had on, I don't know if you remember, there was a reality show called, I think it was Pawn Stars, and it followed this one family that had a pawn shop in Detroit or someplace in Michigan, Flint, Michigan. And Seth Abrams, I think that was his name. I forgot what his name was. Seth something. He's been on my podcast twice now, and I've been on his podcast, and he runs a pawn shop. And on my podcast, I described the model to him, and he said, you know what? I never thought of that. I will borrow money from you today. Every time I meet anyone in the pawn shop business and I describe this model, they don't want to do it for some reason, but they always say, we would borrow from you today. You should start that. Wow. So, Max, thanks for that answer. Just gave you the $10 million business model of a day plus a class in how pawn shops are run. Oh, the other question you asked, Robin, about what if it's stolen. So in addition to being, they deal with repeat customers, and they're also very good at, they have relationships with the police. But at the same time, they have insurance. So if something's stolen, it's insured. So that's how they avoid that. What do you think? This is a great question from JBTIV. What do you think the actual reality of the economy is? And when do you expect markets to reflect the actual reality? Great question. It's really two questions. The first question is, what is this actual state of the economy? And the other question is, when will the stock market reflect the reality? Here's the answer to the second question. The stock market does reflect the reality. Why is Amazon at an all-time high? The answer is because all of the competition just went out of business. The furniture store at the bottom of our building just went out of business. They're not locked down anymore. They're for rent. There's a for rent sign. Yeah. So they're gone. So if I'm going to buy furniture, I used to go to the bottom of the building. If I was going to buy shoes, I would go across the street. That's out of business too. For rent sign. So now where do I go? I don't know. I'll go to Amazon. So the better financed companies are the ones on the stock market. There's a reason why the stock market's up. It's because all the mom and pop companies have sadly gone out of business. The stock market has never been connected to the economy. The stock market is about the bigger, well-financed, well-capitalized companies that do well when the local economies do poorly. The second thing is the stock market reflects uncertainty versus certainty. Well, just yesterday, this is big news actually. Just yesterday, the Federal Reserve, so I'm going to give Econ Lesson 101. So the Federal Reserve, since 1913, has been manipulating the stock market. And how do they do that? Well, when they raise interest rates, traditionally the stock market used to raise interest rates or lower interest rates. And they would do that by either buying or selling government bonds. They would either loan more to the government or they would loan less to the U.S. government. That's all they would do. And so when there's high interest rates, you keep your money in the bank because your savings accounts have better interest and it's safe. When there's low interest rates, what do you do with your money? You got to put it in the stock market. But now the Federal Reserve is doing something brand new, and they announced it for the first time yesterday. They've never done this before. The Federal Reserve announced that they're going to buy individual corporate bonds. So if McDonald's borrows money from big hedge funds or whatever, the Federal Reserve will buy those bonds from the hedge funds. And now, instead of the McDonald's paying back the hedge funds, McDonald's has to pay back the federal government. Well, guess what? If McDonald's or AMC or Amazon or any Procter & Gamble, if these companies cannot pay back their bonds, it used to be the hedge funds would sue them. But now the federal government is just going to wink at them and say, look, Elon Musk, you just borrowed $1 billion from Wells Fargo. Don't worry about it. We got your back. We're going to turn the other way for at least a year.
But you can't sue them.
Well, the Federal Reserve, the government is not going to, the government has the option to sue, but they're not going to. The government has the option to seize the assets, but they're not going to. This is their way of making sure the biggest companies don't go bankrupt. The biggest companies now can borrow an infinite amount of money and not worry about not paying it back, because if the economy is going south, the Federal Reserve will say, hey, Elon, don't worry. Shh. don't do anything. Just don't talk about it, and we'll ignore the fact that you owe us money. We'll ignore it for another year, 2 years, 5 years. Just relax, Elon. Don't worry anymore. And so all the biggest companies now just got a free pass to borrow as much money as possible. So let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that companies like Tesla can borrow more and more money and innovate and create jobs and send people to space and do whatever it is they do. And Procter & Gamble can make more and more toothpaste and can hire more and more people to work in the factories, and that will build the economy. That's the good. The bad is that companies can borrow as much money as possible, and there's kind of, I forgot what it's called. It's, they're allowed, they feel a little more free, like they're allowed to make mistakes because the government's got their back. Now, hopefully they don't make mistakes, but they're allowed to. It's a moral hazard. It's called moral hazard in the financial markets. And the ugly is that you can look at what the Fed announced yesterday and say, the Fed is going to bail out the big billionaires, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whoever runs McDonald's. But if you borrowed money to get an education at Harvey Mudd College or Quinnipiac College, if you borrowed as an individual $200,000, the Fed's not going to protect you. You're going to go bankrupt. And if you borrowed money for your house but lost your job, your house is still going to be taken from you. The Fed doesn't care about you. They care about Procter & Gamble. The Fed's view is that if you go broke, we don't want to give you the incentive to not work anymore. We got to make sure you're working at Procter & Gamble. We just bailed out Procter & Gamble. We're not bailing you out because you have to have incentive to lose your house and move to wherever and work in a factory. We can't disincentivize you or else that's bad. So that's the ugly side of what the Fed did yesterday. But that is why the stock market is up huge today. Is that not economic reality? No, that is economic reality. The stock market is celebrating the fact that at a deeper level than ever before, the Federal Reserve has given them a free pass for infinite free money. And now you can say, oh, the dollar's going to collapse. I've addressed that in other episodes and in my newsletter, so I'm not going to address that again. But suffice to say, the Federal Reserve is not worried about that, and with good reason. So that was the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it's also why the stock market does reflect economic reality. Now, what's the actual economic reality for the average citizen? And that is scary. Not scary for everyone. It's just uncertain. Like, what's going to happen when all the pizza restaurants in New York City go out of business and the commercial real estate companies that own those buildings can't pay their own mortgages? They have mortgages too. Yeah. Well, the entire commercial real estate industry could go bankrupt. What's going to happen when 15% of students don't return to colleges in September and colleges are missing out on $23 billion in revenues? Well, colleges are going to go out of business and public colleges are going to lose money. So states are going to need money. And what happens when 40 million people can't pay taxes because they all lost their jobs? State taxes will go to zero. States, cities, everything. Talk about defund the police. How about defund everything? Defund teachers, defund bridges, defund any infrastructure projects, defund the firemen. They're just simply not going to have the money it's going to be like New York City in the mid-70s when it was just, New York City was one big autonomous region in the 70s.
Wow. It's a domino effect.
So, yes, the stock market reflects economic reality. The actual economic reality is probably far worse, but the truth is we don't really know. There's a trickle-down effect. That's a theory. We just don't know how fast it works. If the biggest companies expand, which is what the Federal Reserve is betting on, then maybe they will hire everybody, and maybe it will save the bottom echelons of the economy. But I do think for you and me listening to this, now is the time to develop your side hustles, to develop your businesses, to be a little bit independent of what I call corporatism. The idea that you always have to just graduate college and then sign up for the first corporation that accepts you. There's all these articles right now on the internet, how to apply for jobs if you lost your job. Maybe there should be a little bit more focus. People should be a little more independent of the government and corporatism because they haven't treated you that well lately, to be honest. So you know, we've just discussed side hustles here many times. I will continue to do so. But every side hustle, it seems like they're small, but every single side hustle can be developed into a multi-million-dollar business. So,
You know what I've noticed with Amazon too is recently that they're doing more of their private labeling of products.
what does that mean?
So they're just having their own name on
Oh,
their
yeah.
products. But I mean, I've seen it a lot more in the past few months. But and also, I noticed that it's more difficult to even get accounts to sell things on Amazon. So it's like Amazon is really trying to weed out people,
Yeah.
so that maybe their line is going to be, sold. I think it's like they're doing
Yeah, no, you're right. So Amazon, this has been their master plan since 1997, and now because of the lockdown, remember what we said in another episode. Everything that was the key word is acceleration. Everything that was going to happen in 10 years is happening now. So Amazon's whole model is let's suck in all the sellers, all the stores, and then we'll cut them off and defeat them.
Right.
So that's what's happening. I mean, it happened in books, by the way.
Yeah.
So Amazon has their own publishing companies that are doing fine. And now it will happen in clothing. It will happen in electronics. It's going to happen in every level. This has always been their business model, but it's starting to happen now.
I've just really seen it the past few months. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
But that's why it's so important. Develop your side hustle. And people could say, well, why would a side hustle turn into a $1 million business? Think about it. Let's say you're a virtual assistant and you make train reservations for all the people who sign on for you to be their virtual assistant. You can research each one of your clients. Don't forget the saying, your best new customers are your old customers. You call all your old customers and say, hey, I have other services I can offer you. You could say, I'll take care of your Instagram account. I'll take care of your LinkedIn. I'll take care of your TikTok, your Facebook. And so gradually, and then you can outsource some of that to India or wherever. And there are websites where you can do that. And you can suddenly build an entire social media agency just from being a virtual assistant for $10 an hour. Now you can start being like $1 million a month social media agency. And I know people who have built up their social media agencies starting off as a virtual assistant. So,
There'll be a lot of jobs that we just didn't think of, that are going to be created out of all of this.
yeah, like look at like TikTok. Okay, if I say TikTok to you, what do you think? You think 13-year-old girls dancing, right? But if you look at the actual statistics, if you look at since March 1st, 13-year-olds on TikTok has actually decreased, and the number of 35-year-olds has increased like by 20 or 30%. So TikTok is gradually becoming a mainstream social media outlet.
Maybe because they haven't had jobs.
Right, that's true. We've been making TikTok videos for 50-year-olds now. So imagine a social media agency that helps you on TikTok. Like, there's more and more social media. Like, you know what's huge right now? Pinterest is huge. Like Pinterest, you can
Now you can shop on it.
You can shop on Pinterest. So if you're creating an online store,
Right.
Pinterest is a great place to go.
Right.
So Pinterest has gotten huge in the past few weeks. There's a lot more to social media than people think. Let's say you're an online store selling pajamas. Okay, let's say I want to advertise. I could buy the keyword pajamas on Google, but that might be expensive. So there are people and companies who will analyze for you. Oh, it turns out the exact same people who search for pajamas search for, night lamps, which might be a cheaper keyword to buy. And so there are keyword analyzers and there are social media agencies that will optimize your search engine campaigns so you get just as good results but pay half the money. So for instance, instead of buying the keyword pajamas, you buy the phrase night PJs, and that will work. Or maybe white women's sneakers. So instead of sneakers, so that if you buy a phrase, it's like 1/10 the price of buying sneakers. But women search, I don't know if you've ever searched for, but women tend to search for white sneakers instead of sneakers. So, yeah. So it turns out that's a much cheaper phrase to buy. So you buy that. So,
how about Rent-A-Teen? To do all your electronic stuff. Like we have 5 that we can rent out.
What's that?
People. Rent-A-Teen.
Rent-A-Teen. Yes.
I'm just joking.
No. That's a great idea. Well, we have our kids are 18, the ages of our kids are 18, 19, 21, and 21. Am I right?
Right.
I get it confused. And there are sites, I tell all of them, there are sites like sittersite.com where parents who are sick of babysitting their kids all day long during this lockdown, you will put their baby in front of Zoom and you could babysit their kids for them on sittersite.com and get paid.
Yeah.
Or you could do online tutoring, online homeschooling. All these parents don't want to homeschool. They're happy to use our kids to homeschool. So our kids should be side hustling a little bit more.
Right.
So let's see. Oh, it's we have a few more minutes. Let's see if we could have a question. Could I share some new business ideas I'm seeing right now? So we talked about it a little bit. Obviously, I'm always going to share that, but I always try to come up with new stuff every day or every other day. So the two types of businesses that reach $1 million in revenue the fastest over this past year, the two types, we briefly talked about one of them, social media marketing agencies. If you want to start with zero costs and quickly build up to $100,000 a month, just become an expert on Instagram, Facebook, Google, Pinterest, TikTok. There's new ones, Community. Who else? Email marketing, there's MailChimp, Aweber, so there's lots of ways, and everybody wants to, because everybody's going online and building these online stores, social media agencies are greatly in demand. So to learn the skills, there are plenty. Go to Coursera, go to LinkedIn Learning, go to Khan Academy. There's plenty of ways to learn the skills, and go to Masterclass, and then you start a social media marketing agency, start and learn copywriting, start with your local dentist, and let's say you become an expert on getting your local dentist more engagement online so he gets more customers. Now you have a case study. Now you go virtually to every dentist in the country and sell your services. You're the dentist social media agency, fastest path to getting to $1 million. Number 2 is start your own fashion line. So let's say you have an idea for sneakers. Okay, you can go to Alibaba, search in sneakers. Oh, it turns out you can buy sneakers. Remember the other day we had on what's his name? I think it was Blake McCoskey. Was that his name? The founder of Tom's, the shoe company.
Yeah.
And he said he started Tom's with $5,000. And so I'm like, and he never had any experience in shoes before. Well, now I know how he did that. You go to Alibaba, you type in sneakers, and there's plenty of factories that have been in business for decades, and you see all the reviews and everything. Plenty of factories that will sell you sneakers for $5 a pair of sneakers. And for an extra $1, they'll put a logo on it, or a sample.
Label, yeah.
Yeah, so they'll put a custom logo on it. You can even find out, I would even go and find out, who does Tom's use? What do other sneaker manufacturers use? Go to those factories. They will sell you the same sneakers they're selling Nike, but with your logo on instead of Nike.
Yeah.
So I know companies that do that. They go to like, the Igloo air conditioner factory and say, look, don't send 90% of your air conditioners to Igloo, but send 10% to us just with our name on it, and it's the exact same air conditioner. So anyway, you can type in sneakers to Alibaba. You can see, $5 a pair, 1,000 order minimum. No problem. I'll order 1,000. And then, there's many ways. We could describe it in another episode, but there are many ways you start selling direct to consumer from your online store. So you could sell them on Etsy, eBay, Amazon, Pinterest, Shopify. You could start doing blogs about sneakers and why your sneaker is the best. Remember, everything with a story sells better than things not with a story. So on eBay, I described this example a few months ago. On eBay, they did an experiment. Someone bought a bunch of knives, a set of knives in China for almost nothing, and just without any story, just put it on eBay and sold it. Then took the same set of knives and put it on eBay, but this time told a story. Like, these knives come from, Beijing, and were made by, these workers who worked night and day, designing, and the ridges on the knife are made to cut, bats which are hard to cut through or whatever. You tell a story, and a story told for 10 times the price as a product without a story. And then, there's ways, there are exchanges where you can use this, you can rent the services of an influencer on TikTok who will wear your sneakers and say, hey, everybody, buy these cool, choose yourself sneakers. They've got this, totally great design. I'm wearing them right now. And then they have 30 million followers and they'll start buying your sneakers and so on. So, tomorrow I have, something I'm going to introduce, which I think is really exciting, where you're going to be able to send me questions in a different way so I can answer them, or we could both answer them in real time. Also, ask more questions of Robin, so that she likes sitting here and responding to me.
You have a lot to say today. So.
Yeah, I keep talking. I talk too much.
No, you don't. You have a lot of good stuff to say. So
there's so much information out there.
Sometimes I talk more. So today.
Anyway, what would be great business? This is the business we should start.
What?
A travel agency to CHAZ. So, let's book. We could basically book. We can create a monopoly. We can book every Airbnb and hotel room in CHAZ. So the only way to get to CHAZ is through us. We'll take care of the tickets, send everybody to CHAZ. We'll make sure they get armed escorts when they're in CHAZ, and you get to watch a fight, you get to watch an arson, and we'll get you safely out of there if the government comes in. So you want to start a business? Boom. That's the idea of the day.
You can be an actor in it. You can be an actor in CHAZ.
You could be a crisis actor if you want.
Crisis actor.
So you could.
Why not?
Oh, you know what? Oh, let's set up a store in CHAZ that if you want, you could blow it up. Okay, so we can make a whole, it'd be like Fantasy Island. So it'll be like CHAZ Island. Like the travel agency for CHAZ. That is the business idea of the day. Forget credit lines for pawn shops. Forget social media agencies.
The new Westworld. Do you remember Westworld when we were young? The movie. No, it was so cool because you could dress up in different, I guess eras. And you can pretend like you're a cowboy or you were,
By the way, that's just like the Westworld of now.
I don't
so there's the HBO Westworld based on the Westworld.
I know it is, but it didn't have Yul Brynner in it. It doesn't have. I like Yul Brynner. Yul Brynner
was in the Westworld.
Original.
All right, well, no, I'll shave my head and I'll be an actor in Westworld. So, but this is CHAZ World. Get your Airbnb.
How about jazz, like the James?
Well, no, but I want to send people. I actually want to send people to Seattle.
I know.
And let them blow up a building. Let them.
We can simulate one here.
We could, but we can use CHAZ. CHAZ is already there.
We just create another one.
No, but the thing is about CHAZ is that you've got the threat, you've got the fear, you got what's going to happen next. Is the warlord? What's his name? There's a warlord there. The guy who runs it. They're calling him Warlord Raj or something like that. And you could get the
you can maybe have a coffee with him or something.
Oh, coffee with the warlord. Yes, great idea. 24 seconds left. I'll put this store on my IGTV. I'll save it there. We'll also put it on YouTube today and podcast. Please share it with people because we want to know that you like this. Leave comments and questions on it. And I'll see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Boom.
Your daily dose of gaming just got way more epic with the Snapdragon processor powering the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. Snapdragon processors give you the premium mobile experience that triggers your inner champion. Whenever you want, wherever you want. Get ready for edge-of-your-seat performance, advanced customizations, ultra-realistic graphics, and adrenaline-boosting speeds that have the power to move you in more ways than one. Follow us on Instagram at Snapdragon Official.